Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Today I wanted to talk about a topic that I might have mentioned in an old video, but now the fact that actually I'm dealing with this in one of my classes is very crucial for me to actually address the parents. And if you're watching this, I hope you're not going to take this in a very personal way or a negative way, but more of like a very constructive criticism that might be coming your way, especially if you see yourself doing one of the things that um, I'm going to be talking about and advising you not to do. So, just to give you a little background into this, I'm teaching high schoolers, and one of the classes that I teach is Islamic Studies. And I started this actually last year, towards the end of the year, and then because I learned a lot from these kids, I wanted to actually start on its beginning of the year and hopefully continue with it until the end of the year, in addition to other things that we do in Islamic Studies. And so the main thing for me, I strongly believe that if you're not a confident, proud person of who you are going to struggle as a person, let alone as a Muslim, especially that you are a minority in this country. So I started with the students talking about self-love and what it means to love yourself and specific characteristics, and when they define themselves or identify with a specific one, do they actually even fully understand what it means? And we gave examples of being loyal, being friendly, and truthful and things like that. And I'm not book driven. I always like for the kids to be part of the learning process. So one day we actually had Islamic Studies from 8 until 12:30. I asked for permission from other teachers to allow me to use their class because I had a very long activity. And that activity was for the students to, each one of them to have two pieces of paper. The first one, they would write the names of their classmates. The girls had to write about the girls and the boys had to write about the boys. And every time a student's name is mentioned within that gender group, each person on their paper, they will write the name of that student and they'll write the good qualities they actually, believe that person has. And we did that for every single student. When we were done, I took them to the back of the class and I had 3 chairs, one for me and 2 were for the students. So each student got to come, sit down, and then the 3rd chair was actually facing that student, where all of their classmates from their same gender would actually line up and then come and sit at that chair, and they would tell that person eye to eye what they think of them without having to read from the paper. So it was really great experience for them. And then everyone who got all the comments from their classmates, they would go to their seat and they would reflect on the things that their classmates saw in them. Do they really think that they have those qualities? Do they want to improve on those qualities? And things like that. So we spoke about it a lot, like what should you do with people's opinions about you, especially if it's something that you don't have, or things like that. So, and then of course, I collected them and I read them. One thing I really appreciate about the kids is that they were really honest. They opened up their hearts, and they had, most of them had sincere reflection. I could see that. Which also I intended for it to be used for me to tackle some other issues that we want to tackle when it comes to building the confidence and self-love and, and identity and all of that. And it's very interesting that when I was sitting with them, they so a few things, and I want to talk about 2 main things. There are other things that I might actually talk about, but beauty and smartness. Some of them called others smart, but when they were called smart themselves, they kind of like disagreed. They said we might be hardworking, we might be trying. People are trying to be nice to us to call us smart. So these are a few of the answers. And then beauty, when I was sitting, it blew my mind, and this is specifically with girls, it blew my mind that they subconsciously used the word beautiful with like one or two students only, and they had like the criteria, and it was like a large, not a large number in sense of like, you know, most of the girls, but it was like I think 5 or 6 of them that actually all said to this other girls like, you're beautiful, but which is great, but they actually didn't see themselves beautiful. So this is the first, and then I asked him, actually today, I said, who thinks that they're beautiful? And only one student actually raised her hand. And of course I asked the boy who thinks he's handsome. One boy actually raised his hand. And the sad reality is they laughed. Everybody laughed when that one girl raised her hand. And it's not the girl that actually others thought she's beautiful. Totally different girl. And I said, you know what? I was hoping that it would be in reverse. All of you guys raising your hands, and maybe one from each group not raising their hands. But what made it worse is like, they're laughing. It's like, oh, you really think like you're beautiful? Oh, you think you're handsome? And I asked him, I said, define beauty. And they struggle with that. And I know in their heads, because subconsciously the girls, again, 5 of them or 6, identified one girl that I know this is what society actually defines as beauty. But even for that same girl, she thought she was fat, which is something that we're going to talk about. But I was so proud of the one girl who said she's beautiful and the one boy who said he's handsome. And I told them, I said, you know what? I personally think that I am handsome. This is not to brag. This is called self-love. I said, because here's the thing. I said, who is the first one that you're actually directly or indirectly questioning? It's Allah. Because He created you. So for me, when I say I'm handsome, I'm not saying I'm bragging and I'm like, you know, this is stunning. No, I'm not saying that. See, this is a problem. We think that we have to, I don't compare myself to anyone. And actually that girl, she said she's not comparing herself to anyone. It's self-love. And so did that guy. They were not looking at this kind of like standard, which unfortunately we have, like the height, the, you know, the skin color, the eye color, the hair color. I mean, all these standards that we have, which keep changing. And I told him, I said, you know, if you were here, you know, a few decades ago, a guy with a big belly is a guy that every woman wants to marry. Not everyone, but, you know, those who can relate. That means he's a rich person. His belly is right in front of him. Or actually a woman who's actually healthy, meaning not skinny. That was the beauty. And I told him, don't use that. When you love yourself, you're saying, Alhamdulillah. Ya Allah, you created me this way. I love myself. I would not have wanted it any other way. It's not, and one said, isn't that pride? I said, no. Pride if I think that I'm better looking than somebody else. See, that's the problem. When I start looking and say, you're ugly, you're ugly. I said, no. For me, I don't look at others and say, you're ugly, you're not beautiful enough, you're not handsome enough. No. And I told him, I said, even if I come to you, and I was talking about smartness, because I said, I wouldn't come to you and say you're beautiful or ugly, but, you know, I said some teachers might kind of like question you directly or indirectly and make you feel, you know, not smart. I'm going to talk about smartness. I said, don't allow for others to assess you. You have to love yourself. And this goes to the parents. Because I had a student that I actually had to, and some of them actually had to have one-on-one conversation because I really wanted to understand, to dig a little bit deep into their heads and brains and understand where they're coming with that from. And it really hurts me when a student says, well, a family member calls me fat. And I'm looking at the student, I'm like, you're not fat. And I asked that student, I said, do you think I'm fat? They're like, no, you're skinny. I said, I'm underweight. And I told this to the class too. I said, I'm underweight. But I said, for me, I'm not looking to look bigger. I said, I have to stay healthy. So for me, even when I'm approaching my diet, I'm not going to reduce the amount of food I'm eating, consuming, because I want to look skinny if I'm thinking I'm fat. I said, you want to be healthy. It doesn't matter whether you think you're skinny or fat, you want to be healthy. So what you're consuming should be a concern, not because you want to please others or you want to look a certain way in front of the mirror, because you want to be healthy. Because I told him, I said, who is not looking for a quality life? All of us are looking for a quality life. And I said, The quality food will give you quality life. Looking skinny or fat is not going to give you the quality life. Feeling healthy is what is going to, because I asked the student, I said, so I'm skinny, can I drink soda? Can I actually eat, all these junk food? He said, yeah, because you're not fat. I said, no, I'll be destroying myself. So please, parents, talk to your kids about being healthy. And before you even do that, tell them that they're beautiful. Tell them they're handsome. And I told the kids, I said, if you are so preoccupied and consumed with this outer look that you want to improve on, the one that you hate, you cannot focus on your inner self. You cannot focus on improving yourself internally, because you're so busy and so sad and so consumed by all these outer standards that you want to meet and you would never meet. Love yourself. Ya Allah, I'm satisfied. I'm happy with what you have given me, and I'm pleased with it, and I'm celebrating. I said, don't just say, I'm accepting it. No, celebrate it. Celebrate it. And then the other thing is smartness. We as parents have good intention. We want to push our kids. We want to really get them going. We want them to be healthy. We want them to be doing really well. I said, okay, define smartness. What does it mean to be smart? And to complicate things for them, I said, you guys have heard the terms book smart and street smart. Are they the same? They said no. I said, but the word smart is used, right? But a street smart is less likely to be, the reason we call them street smart, because we think they're not book smart. And book smart, we don't think they're going to survive on the streets. But this is smart and this is smart. Even the IQ testing, we know this. Studies now are showing, saying, don't look at the numbers. Don't look at the level of smartness, but think about how smart my kid is. And I told him, I said, if a fish, and this is the famous saying, if a fish was to be assessed based on its ability to climb a tree, it has failed. So each one of you guys has an ability. You have a strength. And you have to build on that. Don't look at yourself and your performance in math and say, I'm stupid. You're not stupid. Math is not your thing. You might end up being a lawyer. Same thing, if English is not your point of strength, fine. Maybe you could do better in math. Maybe you could do better in social studies. Maybe there is something maybe you could do better in something else. Yes, some people might help you find that, but a lot of times people actually try to point out to you that which you're not good at. And even parents do that. Oh, you're really bad in math, and don't say that. So we need to work more on math. Words are very powerful. They can either make you stronger or just break you. And when it comes from somebody who's loved and somebody that, especially a parent, because, it doesn't matter what the relationship, most kids, they look up to their parents. And if you're the one who actually is the one destroying your kid, and maybe they don't get much support at the school, then you're not really helping them. And sometimes we try to justify it. Well, they're not doing enough, or, whatever we have as reason or excuses why we're actually being difficult on our kids and hard on them. But at the same time, actually, if you look at it, when we speak down to our kids, when being always negative and just highlighting the negative things, you could address an issue if you have a concern. But the way that actually you address it, a lot of times matters the most, even more than the message itself. So please, as parents, teach your kids self-love. I don't care. You send them to me and you expect me to teach them Quran and Hadith, and you have destroyed them from inside, then it has no meanings. Actually, I asked the kids, I mentioned part of Hadith, and that Hadith is very famous. The Hadith in which speaks about the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment, when there is no shade but the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he said, a young person who is growing in the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, said, how many of you guys see yourself in that part? I didn't say how many of you guys are that person. You see yourself in that statement, meaning you're striving and really trying your best. And one kid actually raised his hand, and then he looked around and he was the only one, and said, you know what, keep it up. Keep your hand up, because you want to be. Maybe you're not. And you shouldn't feel that, you know what, I am on the safe side, because we'll always have to struggle. But you have to really put the effort and see yourself as someone who's trying to work towards that. The Prophet ﷺ spent his entire life, when he received the revelation, his entire life pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he tried his best. So I told him, do that. Try to see, because if you don't see yourself in those ayat and those hadith, I said, you know what? That moment, if you're really not establishing a connection, then it doesn't matter what religion from. When you read a hadith, you're just reading it. The difference between us Muslims and non-Muslims is that when we read these hadith, when we read these ayah, we have to connect. We have to see ourselves. When there's a warning, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us. But again, I said, once you have that self-confidence, self-love, I don't have to worry about my physical appearance. I don't have to worry to prove myself whether I'm smart or not. I know who I am, and I'm accepting myself as I'm improving. Then I start to plug myself in these ayat and these hadith and all these things. But if I don't, I'm preoccupied. You know, it amazes me sometimes. Those who are teaching Islamic studies and tarbiyah, they sit a book in front of the kids, they make them memorize, and those kids are actually crumbling. They're falling apart in front of those teachers. And those teachers could care less. Or parents sending their kids to the masjid to memorize Quran or to attend a halaqah or whatever it is. And right before they leave or after they come back, they call them stupid. They call them fat. Really, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing as a parent. So, and I will continue to share any lessons that I learn as I continue to teach these kids, in hope that I'm giving you an insight into my classes, an insight into what you should be doing with your kids as parents, in the hope that it becomes a partnership between us as we continue, inshallah, to raise a very successful generation. What I mean is, it's not just my students. My students are only a sample from the population of their peers. So I don't care where your kids go to, Islamic schools or public schools, weekend school, whatever the case might be, they share a lot in what my kids are actually sharing with me. So jazakumullah khair wa barakallahu feekum, and I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept from us, and most importantly to guide us and guide our children. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.